But Stephen A officially announced that Shannon Sharpe is going to First Take. Everyone thought it was too good to be true. Stephen A went on his podcast and he's like, I'm not going to say any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Shannon Sharpe, you're welcome on First Take. And it's like, if you have any problems leaving Undisputed with Skip Bayless, like, go ahead and call me, which I respect from Stephen A. Smith. And then ends up pulling it off, bringing Shannon Sharpe. And then we were like, wait a minute. We laid off Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy, all of these guys clear all the space. ESPN makes a deal with Pat McAfee, the most relevant, most important, and the best voice in NFL and sports media, in the NFL at least, and then JJ Redick for the NBA. And then they make this massive deal with him. So now they own the best voice in NFL football in Pat McAfee, the best voice with JJ Redick. They don't own his podcast because he's with The Ringer, but he comes on the First Take and then schools all their terrible guests that they have on there. Right. And then Shannon Sharpe now going toe to toe with Stephen A. Smith. And you may be like, is this going to be a Michael Irvin thing where they just scream at each other? That's the thing. Michael Irvin just screams. Shannon Sharpe is actually smart, knows what he's talking about, and he proved he can actually talk basketball very well. So I think this is going to be a really good match, a loud match. And Stephen A kind of did the thing where he's like having rotating guests. If they do that, now they'll always have Shannon on that and they'll have Stephen A. I'm just waiting for JJ Redick, Shannon Sharpe, Stephen A. Smith, and Kendrick Perkins all on the same panel.
Elite panel right there.
And then Shannon Sharpe and Marcus Spears.
Oof, I don't want to see Marcus Spears, but no, I mean, we're talking about fireworks every single day with Skip and Shannon the last few years. And then you have him and Stephen A. Smith. My thing is, I don't know exactly what they're going to argue on because I feel like their takes usually align for the most part. And I feel like they have similar politics as well.
No, not about Michael Jordan, because Stephen A is a hard no. Michael Jordan's the GOAT. So they'll still have that LeBron Michael thing.
Yeah. But in general, I feel like they align most of their ideas with each other. But we're talking about fireworks there. And then I also heard that Skip and Richard Sherman are going to be lining up against each other every Friday. Now, that's one that I'm like, okay, I think Skip, give him all the shit you want to give him for just being ridiculous sometimes with his takes. And, you know, him himself, you know, say what you will. He knows how to pick hosts. And him and Richard Sherman, who is one of the most entertaining NFL players of the last 15 years, aligning together, a guy who hates Skip Bayless, this is going to be fireworks.
Yeah, and then people are like, oh, Skip Bayless is afraid to debate Nick Wright because he doesn't want anyone who will challenge him. And I'm like, Richard Sherman literally was like, Skip Bayless, I hate you. And then they had this massive beef back and forth, which has been documented. Apparently they put that aside. Richard Sherman's going to come on. Interested to see how he's going to talk about basketball, but I think he's going to fit right in and pick up where Shannon Sharpe left off. And it's like, I was like, who are they going to replace Shannon with? And be like, oh, who wants to work with Skip Bayless after all the stuff that happened last season, the disrespect with Shannon Sharpe? Just seemed like a show that had run its course. They're tired of the same stale conversations. And then kind of just like, you got too comfortable, and then he lashed out. Wasn't the same. But with Richard Sherman, it's something new. It's something fresh. They'll be able to have a different style of argument. And then he also announced that Lil Wayne is going to be joining every single Friday to talk sports with Skip and Richard Sherman. My thing with Lil Wayne is, for someone as good as rapping he is, I feel like Lil Wayne is the best person at rapping that's terrible at talking. Like, yes. Anytime he goes on that show, I'm like, how many blunts did you smoke before that? Because I can tell, like,
he also just mumbles too. You don't really understand. It's just like,
yeah.
It's like, all right, wait. If I can interpret 3 of the words you just said, then I maybe agree with you. But yeah. I'm here for it. I mean, we got Lil Wayne, you got Richard Sherman. I'm interested. They've probably announced a few more guests at this point. They're bound to. When do they come back again? I think it's October, right?
August.
Okay, so yeah. They'll be back at the end of this month. But super excited. I mean, Wayne, he's been on the show several times at this point. He's been on, because he used to be on First Take all the time too. Obviously, He made the just Undisputed song.
Yeah, he made the original First Take song. He made the Undisputed song. He just made a new theme song So he was in the studio making that. It's kind of like it's like one of the weirdest friendships. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, Skip Bayless and Lil Wayne are best friends. It's like kind of the one who's like,
it's kind of like a Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg sort of thing too.
yeah, because Skip kind of comes off as a prude sometimes.
Yeah, and he's just like an asshole most of the time. And you got Wayne, who's like not gonna put up with your bullshit kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lil Wayne is someone who hasn't like been scared to talk about controversial topics, but this really begs the question. Ever since they split up, I enjoyed Undisputed more than First Take. I felt like the Max Kellerman was a whiff, and then there was some weird language where Stephen A would just talk down to him and call him stupid, or he would just pull the, oh, you're not qualified to talk about basketball card. And then he was never really able to replace Max. Has kind of had this rotating cast where you don't even know if Stephen A is going to be on the show in a given day. So I feel like as an eye for talent, Skip was the one who brought Stephen A on the show. He was like, hey, I want you. Like, I'm kind of stagnant and it's going to take the show to the next level. Fought for Shannon Sharp, helped him become a star, even with all their drama. Shannon Sharp still gives a lot of credit to Skip Bayless for his career. Not they wouldn't have had it without it, but he does. And then Skip Bayless bringing on Richard Sherman. Stephen A kind of getting like the second sloppy
wind.
Seconds with Shannon Sharp, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like, as far as Skip Bayless, like an eye for talent, producing a show, picking a co-host. Like I get Fox is never going to compete with ESPN's numbers, but I feel like as a product, Undisputed has been better than First Take.
Yeah, and honestly, their content outside of Undisputed has been better too. I think just historically, they get some of the better clientele from ESPN, but ESPN lately, I mean, I say lately, but the last year or so, they've kind of revamped themselves, especially with Pat McAfee, JJ Redick, and Shannon Sharp. But overall, I think Fox is a better product most of the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though they kind of do the same thing that ESPN does, where they like spew out takes every day, I feel like theirs is more guided in thought, where like you're not going to have somebody say like, oh, the Jets have the highest target on their back this year.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to say some ridiculous shit like that, like you hear from ESPN every day.
Yeah. Dan Orlovsky. So like people hate these shows. And they're like, oh, Skip Bayless is an idiot. He had this crazy take. It's like, he ruined sports media forever. Sports media needs to be a calm conversation where we're dissecting it. And then we're having rational takes about players that we all agree on. Okay. Someone who's tried to add rational takes about players, even if I have a rational take about something that I think is well thought out, people will be like, oh, that's a crazy take. Why are you like going over the top? So it's like, okay, try to be reasonable. That doesn't work. Try to be reasonable. People are like, oh, that's boring. Nobody watches.
The bear doesn't like it.
Yeah, even the bear doesn't like it. And people are like, that's boring. Like, I don't want to watch that. And then they watch these take machines because you're addicted, and people are addicted to watching people that they hate on YouTube for some reason. And then they get worked up and emotional about it. And then Skip Bayless is a master at entrapment as far as takes come. So it's like, say what you will about the guy. The guy has some great takes and he's a master at his craft.